You are listening to the It's Your Time podcast, and I'm your host, Certified Life Coach Michelle Arnold Burke. In today's episode, I'm discussing being halfway there, reflections, insights, and new beginnings. Welcome to the It's Your Time podcast, the podcast where busy professionals like you get the practical solutions and support you need to gain control of your schedule so you can strive to be the best in your career, but without the stress and overwhelm. If you're looking to increase your energy and decrease your stress, you are in the right place. Hello. Welcome back to the podcast, friends. How are you doing today? Hey, listen, this podcast is a last of sorts. Now, not to worry, we're not stopping it, but this is the last podcast I will be recording and sharing in my 40s. It's so crazy, right? And it's also so interesting because it happens to land on episode 280. And you know that every 10th episode, I typically like to share either a book or a mentor, some sort of insights that might be able to help you. And today, I am that mentor. Today, I am actually reflecting back and wanting to share a couple of ideas with you and concepts and tools, and as always, hope they help you. But here's something that is just so crazy. So this past weekend, we were going through some of my dad's things, and I found a hard copy of a zingogram that he had as a gift back on his 50th birthday. And I don't even know if they still do zingograms. So I guess for those of you who may not be familiar, back in the day, you would hire this company and they would bring like a character in and they would take different things that were important to the person that was getting the zingogram and put it to a song and then basically just embarrass the person. But I remember thinking that was so old back then, 50. Guess what? These days, 50 doesn't seem so old in my mind, especially since it is just around the corner. So like I said, I want to reflect back on some lessons that I've learned in the first half of my life. And yes, I do still think that I have another half. So there's going to be more beginnings and more for me to share with you. I will assure you of that. But as you know, I am often saying that I share these things with you in hopes that you learn and implement faster than I have. And honestly, I've worked on preparing this episode a couple of different times, thinking that I needed to have it all organized and structured, but it just wasn't flowing. So you are going to get it just as it comes from me, which actually might be a great place to start. You get to do you in a way that works for you. You know, let me just pause quickly because whenever I'm coaching clients, I usually say how we do one thing is how we do most things. So if you've been doing this work, maybe even as simple as journaling, for example, you might notice patterns that come up. Things that maybe you think trigger you or things that you just seem to think are a drag for you. And sometimes these patterns stem from tightly held beliefs, maybe even belief systems that we took on from some other person's truths. And those other people might be family members or friends, society. But here's the thing. You don't have to continue believing all of them. If they are not useful for you, you can let them go. So as I start thinking that there is a quote unquote right way to do this episode or how I quote unquote should do it, I recognize that is in fact a deep seated pattern in my life. Quick side note, we should all stop shoulding on ourselves, right? It is not super useful. But I will say, I often think that I am doing it wrong. And by it, oftentimes I mean life. So I think back to my 30s, for example. I remember turning 30. I was dreading it. And dreading was like with a capital D. In fact, it might have been in all caps, dreading, right? Here's why. I was 30. I was not even engaged. I obviously didn't have kids. And society tells us, women, that we should be like married by then, right? In fact, I just heard this week in the OR. And I know times have changed since I was 30, but it is still around. Someone was asking the physician's assistant if she was married yet. As if that's what defines us or makes us successful. Sure, if that's what you want in life, but the question is that what you really want? Or is it what you think you should be doing? There is a big difference. And then, of course, after you get married, what is the next question? When are you having kids? Well, here again, I didn't quite fall into that mold. And for many years, I've talked about it here before, right? I did therapy and or coaching over not being a mom because I will tell you, there is a lot that can be tied up emotionally in having or not having kids. Again, if this is something that you are working through, I see you. I get it. And becoming a mom or not does not equate to our worthiness. One is not better than the other. People will say things like, oh, you don't have kids? And often my answer has always been, well, I do have a dog, and I am pretty happy that that dog will not turn into a resentful teenager one day, right? I try to joke about it, but honestly, for years, I will say even within like the last 7 years, I was still being coached on this. Finally, my coach just said, Michelle, when are you going to stop apologizing for your life? And that kind of landed. So think about that for you. Where are you apologizing in your life? Think about, as I just reflect back on the first kind of summary or reflection, another part that comes up for me is just knowing that you don't have to please all of the external folks. And sometimes that includes family, because people who love you, they want the best for you, right? But at the end of the day, you are your own unique self. And we're often taught growing up, right, that we must get the good grades and we want to have parental approval and teacher approval. But at the end of the day, what you need most is your own approval. And I will add one more point to this. I don't believe that sentence like you complete me when we're going back to the whole idea of being married or whatever the relationship might look like for you, because I do think a partner is great, but I like to think that we both come to the table whole and then we grow together. First, you need to love yourself. And that, my friends, is sometimes a tall, tall order. Okay, next up, the not enough pattern. Oh, I see this in so many of my clients over the years. I know I've probably talked to you at some point or maybe touched on a nerve, and I still work on this myself, right? It can look like a number of things. I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not doing enough, and we think we are just reporting the facts. You need to question what you are thinking. I want you to think about how you feel when you're saying these things to yourself. Better yet, think back to your younger self or someone that you truly, really, really love. Would you ever tell them all the not enoughs that they are, that you tell yourself? Pretty sure that's a negative. And yet, we think it's truth when we talk about it around ourselves. You have to be intentional with how you speak to yourself. You have to build new neural pathways in order to get new results. And let's engage in some neuroplasticity here, right? It's kind of fun. That might look like, at the end of the day, first, catching when you're telling yourself all the things that you didn't get done. And then, on purpose, making a list of all the things that you did do. You have to show your brain where you did the work. And remember, our brains like to find evidence for what we believe to be true. So it is going to find all of the things left on your to-do list when you're starting the conversation in a scarcity mindset of not enough. The uncomfortable part is often taking the time to give yourself credit. The uncomfortable doing it, getting through it, is where you find your growth in life. Remember, our brains are designed on a motivational triad to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and be as efficient as possible. So if you've been thinking the not enough story for a long time, which many of us have, it is very comfortable to continue telling it. It's crazy, right? It's comfortable to make ourselves feel like crap. And it's efficient. It's an easy go-to story that we've been telling long enough, right? And if it is, then telling yourself that you're doing a great job, that can be a challenge. It's as if we think, oh no, if I give myself too much credit, I won't push as hard. I won't be successful. Give it a whirl. Try to build a habit around giving yourself some credit. And it doesn't have to be long. Take 2 to 5 minutes and remind yourself every single day, maybe it's at the end of the day, remind yourself everything that you did get done. For me, I sometimes actually start this habit in the morning to kind of reflect back on how much I did the day before so that I am going into my next day with a new energy, because you will feel way more powerful heading into that day when you remind yourself of all of the great things that you're doing. And I may even add, not only will you feel better, but maybe even a little bit less anxious. And likely that empowered feeling will beget more empowered actions. Okay, so far, love yourself and be your own cheerleader. Some may say soft skills, and yet it is some of the hardest work that we do. Okay, you know what comes to mind when I think of doing hard things or things being hard? it is really hard to change someone. And trust me when I tell you, if I figure it out, I will have a special bonus podcast episode released on the day that I figure it out, and I will likely become uber rich sharing the tools that could accomplish that, but we can't. So for now, I will say this. Allow people to be who they are for your own benefit. And is it Oprah who also says, believe them when they show you who they are the first time? I hear a lot of folks talking about how this person made me feel mad or this person makes me feel shameful. And if only they would change, I would feel better. Do not give them that much power. They have actions. We have thoughts about the actions. And then the way we are thinking about them is what causes our feelings. And you might want to feel mad, but own that. You always have the opportunity to be intentional with your reaction to them. That, my friend, is a superpower. You, of course, might have an initial reaction, but check it. Is it useful to you? Where you are in your life on any given day for you to have that thought. If yes, amazing. But if it causes pain, then you have some decisions to make, right? And speaking of decisions, this is one that I often get because people want to know if they're making the right decision, right? So when you're thinking about what's going on with this other person and you have the thoughts that go back and forth in your mind, and this could even be, if you're looking at a promotion or a new job or a move, whatever it is, where you think there is a quote unquote right decision. I want to ask you this. Who decides that it is a right or wrong decision? The answer is you. You get to decide if it is a right or wrong decision. Maybe the result might not turn out the way you expected it to or wanted it to, but guess what? You get to tell that story. You can decide that it was a great learning experience and then move on. Or you can tell the story about how you failed and how you can never seem to figure it out. Again, you get to choose. And you know what else? You also have the option to decide in advance about how things are going to go. Remember, we talked about how your brain wants to find evidence for what you believe to be true. So if you decide in advance that, let's say, your vacation is going to be amazing, most likely you will find all the amazing parts. Now, if you think that vacation is going to be crazy and overwhelming because you have the kids and the family members or whatever it is for you, guess what? Again, you will find more evidence for that to be true. Here's another example, right? Think about when you're going to meet somebody, and let's say it's a new coworker, and someone has told you how amazing she is. You normally end up jiving with her, right? If, however, a trusted friend told you how terrible she was and how she was caught cheating on a boyfriend or whatever the story is, right? I'm not lying here. You most likely will find the reasons not to like her. So it's important to recognize that you have choices, you make decisions, and then you get to choose if those decisions are good or bad. Okay, so we've had a bit on self-love, we've had a bit on positive speaking to yourself, a bit on the importance of decisions in your life, and a lot about the power of choice, right? If there is nothing else that you take from this episode, if this is the one thing, I want you to take away the fact that you have the choice to decide what you want in life and get working on it in a way that works for you. And I am going to sporadically be dropping podcasts where we're looking at insights or maybe new chapters, new beginnings. This is the fun part, my friends. You get to write the story. Write it in a way that works for you. Next week, I will be back here. I will be starting a new decade older. I'm sure I'll have much more wisdom, right? But I know one thing that is definitely going to be consistent. I will come next week with so much gratitude as I do today for you being here. And I hope that you find this helpful. You know that you can always reach out to me on the socials at Michelle Burke Coaching. All right, friends, that's what I have for you this week. Let's meet back next week. But for now, make it a great day. Take care. Did you know you can take this work to a deeper level with me one-on-one? Go to michelleburkecoaching.com and click on Get Started to begin.